Hi, this is Blake.
Hi, this is Cameron. We welcome you to yet another episode of TrustTalks.
You ever feel like audit scope is one of those things, those terms that kind of make your eyes glaze over? Like, it's important, sure, but not exactly the most thrilling thing to think about.
It does sound a bit dry, doesn't it?
Right. But get this, I was looking through these materials you sent over, and it turns out audit scope, it's kind of like a secret code to understanding what's really, really going on inside a company.
That's true. It really is. Think of it like this. An audit scope, it reveals the health, the risks, even honestly the personality of a business, all through this process of setting boundaries and figuring out priorities.
Okay, see, now that you put it that way, it's starting to sound a little more interesting.
Yeah.
So for those of us who, maybe don't speak fluent audit, could you break it down for us? What does audit scope what does it actually mean?
You know how when you're planning like a research project, you don't just say, all right, I'm going to learn about everything.
Yeah, you'd never get anything done.
Exactly. You have to pick a specific area, to focus on. Audit scope, it's kind of like that. It defines the boundaries of what the audit will and won't, what it will and won't cover.
So it's about setting those limits up front so things don't spiral out of control.
Precisely. It's about making sure everyone's on the same page, about the goals, the areas that are being examined, the time frame. It makes sure the audit is, that it's focused, it's efficient, and ultimately, useful.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, this article that you sent, it mentions several factors that go into determining the scope. Can you give us the inside scoop on what some of the most important ones are?
Well, first and foremost, it's about understanding the why behind the audit. What are the objectives? Are we checking if the financial statements are accurate? Are we making sure the company is complying with environmental regulations? Or are we focusing more on operational efficiency? The answer to that why, it really shapes the scope.
Different goals, different game plan.
Exactly. Then there's risk assessment. And this is where things get really interesting. Auditors, they have to think like detectives. They have to identify potential vulnerabilities within the company.
Ooh, give us an example.
Let's say you're auditing a company that handles a ton of online transactions. Their audit scope, it might focus heavily on cybersecurity, on data breaches, things like that. It's about prioritizing, right? The areas where problems could have the biggest impact.
So it's like, where are the biggest potential messes?
Yeah.
And how do we make sure those areas are like squeaky clean?
You got it. And of course, we can't forget about legal and regulatory requirements. Sometimes the scope is, it's dictated by things like industry standards or government regulations.
It's interesting how the article, it highlights healthcare with HIPAA. That's a big one, right?
Absolutely. Any company dealing with protected health information, they have to comply with HIPAA. So their audit scope, it would need to reflect that.
It's amazing how audit scope, it touches so many different areas. We've got financial audits, we've got operational audits, we've got IT audits, even environmental audits.
Yeah.
Is it like having a specialized team for each one?
That's a great analogy. It is. Each type of audit requires, a slightly different approach, different expertise on the audit team. It's about bringing in the right people, the right skills to tackle each specific area.
Speaking of skills, one thing I found fascinating in these materials is how technology, it's changing the game for auditors. It's not all green visors and adding machines anymore, is it?
You're right. It's not all green visors.
Yeah.
Those images of endless spreadsheets, they're a little outdated now.
Yeah.
The technology it's really revolutionizing the field. Think data analytics tools that can, sift through mountains of information in just seconds.
Okay.
Visualization software that can turn, complex data into these really easy to understand graphs and charts.
Okay, that actually sounds kind of cool. It's like having superpowers for numbers.
Right. And it's not just about making things faster, although that is a huge plus.
Yeah.
It's about helping auditors to spot patterns, to identify anomalies, and zero in on those potential risks much more effectively.
So it's like having a superpowered magnifying glass to find those tiny little clues that could lead to a major breakthrough.
Exactly. Take a tool like IDEA, for example.
Okay.
It can analyze 100%, not just a sample.
Wow.
100% of a company's data and flag anything that looks out of place.
Wow. So no more needle in a haystack situation.
Right.
That's going to be a game changer for auditors.
It really is.
But I'm guessing it's not all smooth sailing just because you've got, fancy tech tools, right?
Yeah.
The article also mentioned some challenges like that ominous sounding, that scope creep.
Ah, yes. Scope creep. It's the villain in our audit adventure.
Okay.
It's what happens when the scope of the audit, it starts expanding after it's already been defined.
Yeah.
New requests pop up, unexpected complexities, they arise, and suddenly the audit it's veering off course.
So kind of like if you set off into the jungle looking for, a specific plant, but then you get distracted by every interesting bug and bird you came across.
The perfect analogy, yes.
Yeah.
And just like in the jungle, getting sidetracked like that, it can have consequences.
Yeah.
Scope creep can lead to delays, budget overruns, and even compromise the integrity of the entire audit.
So how do you prevent that?
Right.
How do you keep the audit on track when there's that pressure to expand its scope?
Well, communication is key. It really is.
Yeah.
Everyone involved, from the audit team to management to the board, they need to be on the same page
Right.
about the importance of sticking to the original plan.
So it's kind of like having a really good map and compass, but also like being disciplined enough to actually use them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's about knowing when a change is actually necessary.
So not all scope changes are bad.
Exactly. Sometimes new information comes to light during the audit that necessitates a shift in focus.
Okay.
The key is to have a formal process
Right.
for evaluating those changes
Right.
and making sure that they're properly documented and communicated.
So it's all about finding that balance between staying flexible
Yes.
and maintaining the integrity of that original plan.
Absolutely. And that's where the expertise of the audit team, it really comes into play.
Yeah.
They're the ones who can assess the potential impact of those changes
Right.
and advise on the best course of action.
This has been incredibly insightful.
Good.
We've gone from what I thought was a pretty dry topic
Yeah.
to this fascinating exploration of, risk and technology
Right.
and even a bit of a jungle adventure in there.
It's all connected, isn't it?
It is.
But we're not done yet.
Uh,
We've talked about what audit scope is,
Right.
some of the challenges involved.
Yeah.
But there's another piece to this puzzle.
Okay, the suspense is killing me. What's the missing piece? What haven't we talked about yet?
Well, we talked about the what of audit scope and the why, but what about the how?
Okay.
As in, how can someone actually use this knowledge, even if they're not an auditor?
Now you're speaking my language. I'll admit, this whole conversation it's got me feeling a lot more curious about the world of audits than I ever expected.
That's great to hear. It really is relevant to everyone, not just, accounting whizzes or anything. Understanding audit scope, it can help you make more informed decisions in all sorts of situations.
Okay, give me an example. How does this translate to the real world?
Let's say you're thinking about investing in a company, right?
Okay.
Knowing what's typically covered in an audit scope for that industry, it can help you ask smarter questions
Okay.
about their financials, their risk management practices, even their commitment to things like, sustainability.
So it's like having a cheat sheet to understand what questions to ask, to get a better picture of the company's overall health.
Exactly. Or let's say you're working with a vendor who's handling sensitive data.
Right.
Being aware of the audit standards and regulations in that field, it can give you more confidence in their security measers.
It's all about asking those critical questions early on instead of just blindly trusting.
Precisely. And if you ever find yourself needing to dive a little deeper,
Yeah.
there are some fantastic resources available online.
Like what?
Well, one that comes to mind is the TrustCloud GRC Launchpad.
Okay.
They have a ton of free articles, explainer videos, even interactive courses on all aspects of governance, risk, and compliance.
So no matter what industry you're in or what your level of kind of expertise is, there's something there to help you, level your knowledge.
Exactly. It's a treasure trove of information. It really is, for anyone who wants to understand those inner workings of audits and how they impact businesses and organizations of all shapes and sizes.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We've gone from audit scope, a term that used to make my eyes glaze over,
right,
to a fascinating exploration of risk and technology and the power of asking the right questions.
It just goes to show that knowledge is power. It really is. And even those seemingly dry topics, they can be they can be surprisingly engaging when you start, peeling back the layers.
Absolutely. So to our listeners out there, the next time you hear audit scope, remember it's not just an accounting term.
Right.
It's a window. It's a window into understanding the health, the risks, and ultimately the story behind an organization.
And who knows, maybe this deep dive has even inspired a few of you to consider a career in auditing.
Yeah, it's definitely more dynamic and multifaceted than I ever realized.
It really.
And if you're ready to take your audit knowledge to the next level, remember to check out the TrustCloud GRC Launchpad, which we'll link in our show notes. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never stop diving deep.